Greetings and salutations, nerds. You're listening to Praying for Superpowers,
a podcast about the deeper meanings, messages, and intricacies hidden within nerd culture. I'm Peter Jordahl.
And I'm Trever Sharon, and today we're talking about Batman's grief. I'm sad. Now, here's something in our research that I came up with.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that Bruce Wayne is insane because he dresses up like a bat and punches people in the face and lives by some moral code and thinks that he has to be the justice.
And runs around his city at night, and he's a billionaire, and he doesn't act like a billionaire. He's weird.
I think in our context of this planet Earth, that's insane.
Yeah, someone did that in Chicago.
Right. Yeah.
They arrest those people.
Exactly. They're probably diagnosable. However, in a world with aliens, Superman, talking gorillas, individuals who can move faster than the speed of light, travel.
Time being an entity of itself.
I don't think that dressing up as a bat and punching people in the face is the most insane thing.
Right, yeah.
It's pretty benign.
Yeah, in comparison. I mean, what would you do if you were a ninja and you just started saving the city without the bat mantle, and then some dude came at you dressed as a penguin with penguin features and penguin bombs with a top hat.
Yeah. And he's not even dressed up. Like, that's just
I know
him.
He just looks like that. I mean, you're going to feel like, man, I need to step up my game.
Right. I don't think that is a strong premise for Batman being insane. And I wouldn't even say, like, insane is a legal term. It's not even like a diagnosis necessarily, because insanity is more of a legal if you're in the courts, because
it's a general for some mental reason. Right?
And there's a really great book, Batman and Psychology: A Dark and Stormy Night by Dr. Travis Langley. And what he says is basically, like, if you can have two situations and neither of them are considered insane. The first is you have a friend who tells you to go kill someone, you know it's wrong, so you don't do it. You should get better friends. An elephant, an invisible elephant, tells you should kill this person, you know it's wrong, so you don't do it. You're still not insane, and you should get better elephants. And so that goes to, like, that legal term, and that book is excellent. I'm also going to be pulling a lot from Jared DeFife, who's a doctor at a university in psychology, and then Dr. Robin Roseberry, who wrote Superhero Origins. So there's a lot of books on this because it's really interesting to see the psychology of some of our heroes, specifically Batman, because he just seems so out there.
Yeah. And the internet trope, the joke is like, so many kids these days wanting to be Batman and wanting to be Superman. I don't know what we've done to our society to make kids want to be orphans.
Right.
And so, like, Superhero Origins, that's what made me think of it, is you have so many of our heroes come from such dark places. And Batman seems to me to be the only one that stays in that dark place.
Yeah.
Without becoming the Punisher or the Joker. Yeah. A super an anti-hero or a supervillain.
And I have a few thoughts about that. I think that Bruce Wayne's emotional and moral development is stunted because he has chosen to isolate himself in every way possible. And here's what I mean by that. Sometimes when we go through a really traumatic event, we can try to disassociate ourselves from that event. And so we act like it didn't happen to us, or we come up with a buffer that can stand between us and that situation. And I think that Bruce Wayne really did this with Batman. And if you think about it, if you read the comics, Bruce Wayne doesn't like being Bruce Wayne. Mm-mm. Batman doesn't like being Bruce Wayne. And when he does, it's because it's Bruce Wayne as Batman. There's this really clear distinction where Bruce Wayne doesn't stand on his own. He's not really a character. He's just a part of Batman.
Right. Okay. That's what I was going to ask. So what you're saying is Bruce Wayne, the kid, is trapped in his own mind. Mm-hmm. So he uses Batman as a front to help him cope with that. And then Batman uses Bruce Wayne as an escape from Batman.
I would say that Batman is the escape from Bruce Wayne, and Batman is the filter through which Bruce Wayne experiences the world.
Interesting.
Because if you think about it, the only relationship that I can see that Bruce Wayne genuinely has with another human being is Alfred. And Alfred is so embedded in the Batman personality. Like, it's just so intricately involved. And so I think that has even been tainted by the Batman persona. And so Bruce Wayne is completely relationally isolated from everyone in his life because everybody that he knows is through the lens of Batman. And I think he does this for a few reasons. Some of that escapism.
Yeah.
It's a coping mechanism for him. And I also, this is something that I came upon in my research, was that I think he's super counterphobic. And what counterphobic means is that you, normally if you're afraid of spiders, you avoid spiders.
He goes and grabs a spider.
If you're counterphobic, you end up going after that for some reason. It's like a guy who's afraid of heights who finds themselves jumping from an airplane for the thrill of it. And that's really what we see in Batman. However, I don't think that bats are what he's most afraid of.
Interesting. Now, so background for those of you, Batman Begins, the trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy. In Batman Begins, Bruce Wayne falls down a well, sprains or breaks his arm, and bats fly out of a hole in the bottom of this old well. And that is where kind of his fear of bats come. A bit later in the movie, he has like a PTSD kind of callback to it, seeing people dressed in bat costumes. And so that's where that idea of the fear of bats comes from. And he tells Alfred the line, bats are my greatest fear. My enemies will fear that as well.
And so he projects that fear onto others by becoming the bat.
Right.
And having the criminals be afraid of bats.
But
I really don't think that he is most afraid of bats. I think what he's most afraid of is being weak and powerless. You see this throughout all the comic books.
Yeah.
And this would really go back to the trauma of losing his parents. And on this note, Bruce Wayne does not have PTSD because he doesn't show any avoidant behavior. And unless he's doing some self-exposure therapy in the midst of everything, the diagnosis just wouldn't fit as well. I think this may be complex grief or complex trauma. But even Dr. Langley says like PTSD is really an awkward fit for this.
Interesting. Okay.
So we go back. His parents die when he's young. He's vulnerable and doesn't have any power to do anything with it. So it makes sense that would progress through his life if he doesn't. And we see this in, I hate to say this, I really do. Remember episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars and Anakin wanting to save his mother from death and become master of death and all that? We kind of see the same thing with Batman. And what it looks like is we all have things that we are inadequate at. And we try to overcome that inadequacy by being more of something else. So like if a person grows up in high school and they're constantly being told they're dumb and that they're unintelligent, they might go on to get a doctorate and write a whole bunch of really intellectual books to prove to themselves that they're not stupid.
Right. So Batman decides to go out and take down criminals, which the city doesn't have the power to do because it's so corrupt. And eventually save the world and the universe multiple times because...
And go back in time and be a pirate.
Really?
Yeah.
There's Gotham by Gaslight. I really want to read the steampunk version. I haven't read it yet, but it looks great. Anyway. Sidetrack. But yeah, Batman uses that control of Gotham and his own life to prove to himself that he has power because he was so powerless in the face of his parents' death.
And let's go back to the beginning of this episode. He's living in a world with time-traveling aliens. Time is an entity itself. People who can move faster than speed.
The Greek gods are real. Hercules and Wonder Woman are actually the children of Zeus. Like, he's a character.
Superman is one of his closest allies. Well, outside of the Bat family.
Yeah, so he's this is one of my favorite quotes by Batman is it's hard to, or no, it's great to be around Clark Kent, Superman's alter ego, and see him as the human he is. Then he shoots fire from the sky, and it's impossible not to think of him as a god, and how peaceful it is that he chooses not to be a god to us. Yeah. And like, he knows exactly how weak he is. Like, he is not insane thinking he can take out Superman. He knows exactly where his level of power is. Yep. And like, I think that's an important part of this too, is like he knows that he's not a level 10, right? He's seen the level 10s, the earth-eating monsters, yeah, right? He knows where his line is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we see this a lot, and this is a parallel that I really, really like, is if we remember in the first Avengers movie, the really cool moment when Bruce Banner says to the rest of the Avengers, like, he's like, "That's what's your secret?" And he's like, "My secret is I'm always angry." I think Bruce Banner is always angry. Bruce Wayne is always afraid.
Yeah.
He is motivated by fear that he will lose somebody close to him, and so he tries to protect them as well as he can. He tries to keep himself from being weak. We even see his internal struggle and depression in Nightfall after Bane breaks his back, and he other people, Azrael takes over as Batman, and and whenever somebody else takes over the mantle, we see Batman, or Bruce Wayne more specifically, interacting with his own weakness and really struggling with it, because now he's built this family, the Bat family, around him.
Yeah.
And in Killing Joke, when Oracle is paralyzed, he takes that on personally, because to him, he wasn't strong enough to save his parents, and so he has to be strong enough to save everyone else around him. He can't let that happen again, out of his grief for losing. That's how he's dealing with his grief.
And that's why he lets so few people in.
Yeah.
Because he has to protect whoever he lets in.
Yes. Yeah. And that's also why, and this is slight spoiler for the Arkham video game series, it's been out for several years, so whatever, but Nightfall is the last protocol of that game, and Bruce Wayne steps into Wayne Manor with Alfred, and like a few seconds later, the whole building explodes. And a few people were like, did Bruce Wayne just complete suicide with Alfred inside the house? And I don't think that's even remotely possible, because Bruce Wayne will do anything to protect Alfred. He would die for anyone else, because he and I think he has some of these risky characteristics where he may believe that if he dies saving someone else, then he has redeemed everything in his life. And so death isn't really a bad thing for Bruce Wayne. It's a final opportunity to save someone else and to redeem his past and his failures.
Death is his final opportunity to redeem himself and some of his past failures and to protect others.
Mm-hmm.
Hero complex.
Yeah.
That's how I look at that, right?
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. And that would explain a little bit more of why he dresses up like a bat and fights criminals.
There's a line. Alfred actually calls Bruce Wayne out on this in the Dark Knight trilogy. He says, "I wish," he says something along the lines of, to paraphrase, "I still see you as that little boy."
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he's saying it as parents look at their kids who are 30 and still see the 6-year-old.
Right.
It's Alfred looks at Bruce Wayne and he sees deeper, and he sees that he is still the boy in the alleyway by his parents' corpses.
And longing for a father figure. This is really interesting too, because look at the individuals that are older than Bruce Wayne that are male that are in his life. We've got James Gordon, or Commissioner
Gordon, yeah.
who is the first father figure immediately after the death of his parents.
And the TV show Gotham.
Yes.
Yeah.
And canon. Gordon shows up.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've also got Alfred.
Mm-hmm.
You've also got Lucius Fox.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also have a very different one in Ra's al Ghul. Because he is technically father-in-law at some points, and a super complicated relationship there.
Yeah.
But in a way, he's father-in-law. And so he is the closest thing to a father. And you see this really interesting dynamic where some of the time I'm like, why is Ra's al Ghul such a well-known villain of Batman? It doesn't really add up until you throw in the relational connections with Talia. And things start to fall into line of Bruce Wayne is so longing for a father figure that he's willing to interact with a very evil and distorted man, keeping him alive and not killing him, or killing him because he knows he'll come back and it's safe, and letting out some of his frustration of a father leaving and not being there for him. It's just a really interesting dynamic from that lens.
So along those lines, do you think, in your professional opinion, that that is something we see people do with their grief? They're willing to take whatever figure of authority they can in life, no matter how bad they are for them, to help them deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just wondering if that's something you see in maybe abusive relationships and things like that.
That actually brings up a really excellent point, and I'm going to start off with another question towards you.
Great.
So when I say grief, what comes to mind pretty quickly?
The Hobbit trilogy. No, just kidding. I think of graveyards, and I think of sobbing, loss of parents. I'm thinking about Batman right now because we're talking about it. Just complete and total shutdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the stages of grief?
Oh, yeah. So
Does that come up as a...
Yeah. I try not to think of the 5 stages of grief because
you're smarter than that and you know where I'm going?
Right. Yeah. So we've talked about this before, and I've gotten on the internet and people were like these are the 5 stages. Like, I dropped my ice cream cone, 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
My Xbox crashed, 5 stages of grief, and it's annoying when you know what you're leading up to.
And so what I'm leading up to is the 5 stages of grief were developed for individuals in hospice care or who have just been given a terminal diagnosis. And it surprisingly follows this path really pretty closely, where you go through these stages, but only if it's you being told that you are going to die in a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. Grief for everything else, the loss of someone, does not look this way at all. Even if you are losing somebody who's been given the diagnosis of a terminal illness, it's not going to interact this way. Grief is as unique as the people that experience it. We all experience grief in a different way, and it can be extraordinarily messy, and it can be really just all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's actually really good. Grief can be really beautiful if you can do it well. And it's, I really I'm learning a lot about grief from one of my professors right now, Jessie Steffs, and she's an awesome grief counselor. And she talks about grief like a really soppy old dog that just follows you around, and what it wants is your attention. And it can be really annoying to have this big dog lumbering behind you, standing at the door whenever you come home, or following you into the bathroom, or jumping on you in your bed as you're trying to go to sleep.
Standing in front of the TV.
Standing in front of the TV. Absolutely. Yeah, and if we look at grief from that way, if we personify it as this dog that's looking for attention, And if we give it the attention that it needs, if we just care for it, because ultimately what that dog wants is what's best for us. It wants us to recover, to feel what we feel and to experience it and to move through this process well. And a lot of the times we just ignore it and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And we just need to interact with it. We need to be strong enough to reach out and to pet that dog. And we see this in Batman if he's just unwilling to go and reach out for that dog that is constantly chasing after him. And maybe, we could say that for Bruce Wayne, grief is a bat that's chasing him. It's something he's afraid of, and it's something that's always there. But all the bat really wants is for him to sit for a moment, and it may take years, but to sit with it and to experience it, to work through it, to kind of work through the things that he's feeling and go on this messy journey of grief. And there's grief and there's complex grief. And that distinction is really more therapeutic.
Yeah.
And I think that if you are experiencing grief, you should seek out a counselor to make space for yourself where you will sit with that dog and experience the grief that you need to go through, rather than living a life that ultimately is just a lie, like Bruce Wayne's doing.
And I think I just want to make a point that grief does not come only from death.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think that grief is because someone else has died or you yourself have found out you have a terminal illness. But I think, honestly, I've been going through some grieving, the loss of my past self. So I have an almost an 11-month-old who I love. I don't have any negative feelings towards her. But it really took me about 8 months to fully come to grips with the Peter that was before this kid can't really exist anymore. That old Peter has died, quotes,
Or he's lost. He's not here anymore.
Right. It's no longer, I no longer have the freedom. I no longer have the time or the energy. A lot has changed. And so I have been grieving. I mean, I think I'm much more past it now than I was 3 months ago, but it came.
Well, I would challenge that language too. Oh. You're not past it. You've worked through some of it.
I've paid attention to the dog.
Yeah.
Or the bat.
Because I don't think I really don't like the language of getting over or getting past or figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because those things aren't actually what's happening. What's happening is you're processing through it, or you're working through it, you're getting through it, you're moving forward. That's the language. So that's my challenge.
That's good. So I've been processing the grief of the loss of innocence. The ability to stay up till 1 a.m. and play video games and board games. I don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm okay with it. I wasn't okay with it 8 months ago.
Sure.
Now, like it was a struggle then, much less of a struggle now. So I think I've made progress in paying attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So. And I think here's one other thing.
Yeah.
Before we jump back into Batman just a little bit.
Yeah.
If I just sit with it. Emotions are like toddlers. The more you ignore them, the louder they get. And if we can just give them the attention that they need, they're going to do great things for us. And a lot of the times we default to ignoring our grief or our emotions or whatever. And so my challenge is to explore what you're feeling and recognize that there's no right or wrong way to feel. What you feel is what you feel. You shouldn't. I don't like shoulding on ourselves.
Right. Don't should of yourself.
If you're punched in the face, you're probably going to feel angry. And you shouldn't not feel that way.
Yeah.
Because that's just how you feel. What you do next is your responsibility. But that feeling is not the bad part. Going back to Batman just a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that he is really afraid of becoming evil. And the Joker is his way of reminding himself that he's not.
That's why he hasn't killed him?
I think that that plays a big part. Because if you think about it, their origin stories can be told in a way that you are just telling one origin story. And then if you add in some more details, then you can tell the difference between Batman and Joker. They kind of start from a similar place.
Yeah.
Of innocence and then grief and then trauma, or trauma and then grief.
Putting on a mask,
changing into something else. And I think that out of Batman, Bruce Wayne's utter fear, he chooses to go easier on the Joker than he would anyone else. Because as long as the Joker's around, he's the counterbalance to the Joker, which makes him good if the Joker is always evil.
But if the Joker's not there, Batman seems pretty insane.
Yeah.
But in comparison, you're like, man, well, at least he's not the Joker.
Right. He works as a counterweight. And I think it's really interesting looking at Batman now from the perspective of a grieving 12-year-old boy and someone who is deeply afraid of being weak or losing someone else.
Yeah. Leaving you on a heavy note today. So, man, it's. Are we done? We're done, right?
Yeah, we're closing up now.
Okay, I'm just like
let's bring everyone up to a more intellectual thought.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to do, but I was like, man, I'm feeling pretty right now. So,
here's one. There is a new Batman movie coming out with Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh yeah.
The first time I said it, I said Jacqueline.
Yeah.
And my wife laughed at me, and I didn't know why. And she was like, "No, baby, it's Joaquin. Joaquin Phoenix is the Joker,
and it's not even about Batman.
No,
it's called Joker. That's the movie title. As far as of now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I go back and listen to our Death of Superman episode where we talk about this and discuss the rise of villains versus heroes and anti-heroes.
Yeah.
If you're interested in that, and also. Today, the day we're recording, the Avengers, I know we're swapping universes here, but the Avengers Endgame trailer dropped. And
which just goes to show you how ahead on our schedule we are.
Yeah.
So I think it's February now.
Right. And I'm right, it is February now. So I'm making a commitment today, the drop of the teaser, I'm not going to watch another trailer for this movie.
Which one will probably drop before this officially launches. So we'll make sure to put out on our social media today whether or not Peter's been able to hold true to that commitment.
Yeah, and I'm going to. So, last thing. I know there's a lot of you nerds out there that are like, Batman's crazy. He's not. Okay? If you want to challenge us, you can challenge us.
Go in the comments.
Go in the comments on YouTube for sure. Let us know. And then, why hasn't he killed the Joker? We think it's because he needs the Joker as a counterbalance so that he can still see himself as a good guy who's not crazy. If you have another idea, we'd also love to hear it. Anything else you want to let us know about? We'd love any comments at all, of course. But thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll catch you later.